Today is Sunday, December the 30th, 2018. Hello. Welcome to Snowden, the Astrology. It's a video on the astrology of Edward Snowden. A little play on words from the movie. So this guy, he's one of the greatest advocates for privacy because he is responsible for the disclosure of how the government eavesdrops on everyone and has created this huge database of privileged information that can compromise anyone, no matter who you are. It gives the government an incredible amount of power. And I think he's an honest guy who has done a great service to our democracy by exposing the threat to our humanity that comes from invasion of our privacy, because we really can't be fully human unless we can have privacy. So in this video, we will explore his birth chart, elements that indicate his profession, and what he's done, his transits from back in 2013, when he had that big event and he disclosed all of that information. In this way we can get an idea about his motivations, what made him take the risks necessary to follow an ideal. A lot of people do that sort of thing in life, to one extent or another, and for a variety of reasons, and it really helps to see some of the astrological indicators behind such idealistic and rebellious behavior. Then we'll look at his transits happening in January, which indicate that he will have some luck fighting his legal battles. And he has an interesting synchronicity with the aspect Sun sextile Neptune happening on January the 31st, which is the same aspect that is a point of culmination for many other subjects whom I've mentioned recently in my videos on the Deep State War, Part 1 and 2. I'm thinking in January we may come to realize the true value of what Edward Snowden has done for the rest of us, and hopefully more folks will come to appreciate what he stands for, the basic human right to privacy. So let us start with Edward Snowden's birth chart, born the 21st of June 1983 at 4:42 a.m. in North Carolina. So I got his information off the internet. Pretty confident about his birth time, so we got his correct ascendant and midheaven and all the proper locations for the planets, and a few things in his birth chart that we should focus on in order to give us an idea of the character of the man who went so far to pursue a collective ideal. So first I'd like to call your attention to this close conjunction of Saturn and Pluto here in the 5th house in Libra. So Saturn is your career, and Pluto is secretive things and privileged information. So a career in Plutonian things that are kept hidden. And what's so interesting about this is that it forms part of a compound grand trine with Mars and the Sun over here in Gemini and the midheaven in Aquarius. It's fairly close. And this is really powerful, and this is what gives him the capacity to master life. Because Saturn conjunct Pluto really wants to be a master of the physical plane of existence and really dominate it. And these trines to Mars and the Sun give him a tremendous amount of energy to do so. And that midheaven gives him a point of focus. So he is really meant to achieve and will do whatever it takes to succeed. Especially so with Saturn conjunct Pluto. Because think about it, Saturn is your career and what you do to preserve yourself and stand up in this world. And Pluto is relentless. So he has a relentless, even religious drive to succeed in life. And most importantly, he's the kind of person that can rebuild his life from scratch if necessary. Because Pluto is death and rebirth. It's like a volcano. You can completely clear out everything and rebuild from scratch. So here's a person who has basically had his life destroyed, but this Pluto trine Saturn gives him that capacity to rebuild his entire life, especially since it's so well aspected. Part of this grand trine gives him all that creative energy and physical energy as well with Mars and the Sun. So basically, as long as he maintains his self-respect, which is what he needs to do in order to maintain the power locked up in this Pluto conjunct Saturn, and he doesn't do anything underhanded. Then if he does that, then he's an unconquerable person. No one can push him off the rock he has conquered in life. Worthy of tremendous respect. He has the ability to gain the trust and respect of people in power and basically the whole world. And he likes to move in powerful circles. Also note he's got Moon in Scorpio in the 6th house, and he doesn't have many aspects to it. Just 2 squares, no trines or sextiles. He's got a square to Venus and a square to the midheaven. So this guy is somewhat of an iceberg. He's going to express a fairly pure expression of Scorpio, which is 90% underneath the surface, just like an iceberg. But at the same time, Scorpio likes to remain dignified at all times. And he's comfortable working with secrets, Scorpio things. So that clearly is another indicator of his ability to work for the CIA, like he did. Or I guess maybe it was the NSA. But this indicates a powerful character that can withstand the challenges, the very unique challenges that he has created for himself in life. And you'll notice he's got this close conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus here in the early degrees of Sagittarius. So he's very intelligent. He's suited for a career involving advanced technology, especially computers, because that's Uranus. He's also very idealistic. Put these 2 planets together, and that's a lot of idealism. Also very concerned with social causes. And he wants to change society for the better. Jupiter wants to improve, and Uranus is the community and equality of all human beings. So he really wants to help society, create a more open and ethical society, because Jupiter is very ethical. And both planets are very open for his fellow human beings. So he's prone as well to doing bold and adventurous things, because Uranus is surprises and Jupiter is bold and adventurous to begin with. And so he can be very surprising and do a lot of really amazing things with this conjunction. And like I say, both planets work in the light. Jupiter rules perception, so it's associated with physical sight. And Uranus, is the light bearer. It likes to bring more light to society. And because this conjunction is pretty closely opposing his ascendant and his Mercury there in Gemini, he needs to have a relationship. That's the opposition. Infers a relationship with the process of growth, that's Jupiter, and the process of evolution, Uranus, in other people, because it's relationship. And really the only way to do that is to be the leader. So he has a desire to be a leader as well. And Mercury conjunct the ascendant and sextile the Venus there in Leo. He's going to be a really good communicator, really smooth talker, able to adapt and really tell you what you want to hear. Makes him rather political as well, and it also gives him something really important to say. So if he's ever cleared of charges, he might even have political aspirations. So that was just a really brief discussion of his chart to point out his temperament and his ambitions. And basically, I think he is perfectly suited for the position he is in. And it's a real joy to look at this guy's chart and see how these aspects unfolded with the transits that he got. So let's talk about what happened in 2003. Now, the big event where he took off was in May of 2003, but I'm starting in 2013 was when he had that big event. But I'm starting in February of that same year, because you'll see at that time we were having an aspect, Jupiter sextile Uranus. Jupiter at 6 degrees of Gemini, Uranus at 6 degrees of Aries. Well, this aspect made concurrent transits to his natal Uranus at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So he was getting Uranus trine Uranus and Jupiter opposition Uranus at the same time. And I believe this is the set of transits, coupled with the same transits to natal Jupiter as well, that must have really set him free, really must have inspired his idealism. This Jupiter conjunct Uranus got really activated by this set of transits, coupled with this aspect. So we were all kind of going through this, and he really manifested a lot of that energy for himself. And this is a common theme with this gentleman. He has manifested a lot of aspects because they've made concurrent transits to his natal planets. So I'm convinced that this was about the time that he really decided to do what he did and was just waiting for the moment. And if we look at this a little more carefully, we see here it's a trine from Sagittarius to Aries, with Uranus and Aries. So I'm focusing on that. Now this is the third fire trine. The first one is from Aries to Leo. The second one is from Leo to Sagittarius. And then the third one is from Sagittarius back to Aries. So this is the one whereby you take some element of Sagittarius and you incorporate that back into your identity, your Aries. So thinking about what Sagittarius has to do with, well, it's religion and philosophy, professional associations, groups, or social movements that have a doctrine and a moral code or a set of ethical standards. All of that stuff has to do with Sagittarius. So some of that Sagittarian energy comes forth into his Aries, his identity, when he gets this trine to Uranus in Aries. So he feels really pumped up by that. So a typical manifestation of Sagittarius to Aries, like in the birth chart, someone's got this by aspect. You know, someone who wants to become a minister, or someone who carries the doctrine as their part of the identity. And in this case, he was feeling the need to become the standard bearer of some social movement, some very liberal, open social movement to improve society. Okay, and because it was the opposition to his Jupiter, it really motivated his desire to be a leader, because he really wants to do that as well. He doesn't just simply want to be part of or is interested in, but because this conjunction in his natal chart opposes his ascendant in Mercury, he sees himself as a leader. So that's important. It activated not only his idealism with the trine, but his desire to lead with the Jupiter opposition. As well, this trine makes a great motivational speaker because it's someone who wants to encourage growth and learning in others. Again, it's that carrying that Sagittarian banner and bringing it into Aries and identifying with it and wanting to call it out to the rest of the world. So, you know, it's someone who really wants to be helpful. It's a motivational speaker. In a way, he has been that as well. And so this Uranus, trine Uranus, and the Jupiter opposition Uranus, and Jupiter, I should say, should include all that in there, really is the one that instigated his idealism and encouraged him to become the leader that he really wants to be. As well, I would say Jupiter expanded his identity, gave him a real boost of confidence. So this was really a great opportunity for him to fulfill elements existing in his natal chart. It activated his Jupiter conjunct Uranus, opposition to ascendant in Mercury, and gave him that desire to become the leader he really wants to be. So he wants to bring light in by revealing what's in the dark, some vital and privileged information that we all need to have in order to preserve the integrity of the group, in order to preserve our freedom and our individuality, all of those wonderful Uranian traits. And this is really just a great learning lesson. It shows how one can react to an aspect that is forming concurrent transits to powerful points in your natal chart. Something we should all really be looking out for. Events like this can and often do change your life irreversibly. And because the ascendant was involved, he was experiencing incredible transpersonal force on a personal level. So he took the whole thing very personally. Okay, he says, wow, this is all about me and my place in the world. So he was pretty overwhelmed by the energy, I would say. It took him far beyond his safe and secure boundary in life, that is to say, beyond his normal limits, encouraged him to do something he would never do. And that's what happens in extreme cases. Uranus can encourage a person to throw away everything they've ever tried to work towards in their life and follow some ideal. And I just wanted to compare this trine that he got from Sag to Pisces with another person who did a similar thing. I'm sure many of you are all familiar with that football player Colin Kaepernick. And briefly, I'm just going to show what happened with Colin Kaepernick back in earlier 2018. You'll see that he's got one of these trines already in his chart. He's got Saturn and Uranus in Sagittarius trining Jupiter in Aries. And when Uranus conjuncted his Jupiter in Aries and trined his Uranus and Saturn back in Sagittarius, he had a very similar thing. He had Uranus trine Uranus from Sag to Aries, just like Edward Snowden. And at that same time, he became the standard bearer of a movement, some Sagittarian movement. He felt compelled to bring forth and become that and identify with that and take on the ethical standards or whatever it was associated with that group. And that's when he led that movement, the kneeling during the national anthem movement in the NFL last year. So it's the same kind of thing. And for him, it was really strong because he's got Jupiter natally in Uranus, so he can get a pretty big head about it. And it really inspired his idealism, just like it did with Edward Snowden. So that's an interesting comparison of two guys who kind of became the standard bearer for a movement. Okay, so let's skip forward to May of 2013, May 20th, 2013 to be precise. Looking at his transits for that day, he fled to Hong Kong with the information that he intended to disclose, and he began the disclosure process soon after that. So several factors in play on that day. Let's start with the Neptune transits. You'll see here Neptune in the early degrees of Pisces, 5 degrees of Pisces, was in the midst of squaring his natal Jupiter and Uranus at 3 and 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So Neptune square Jupiter, Neptune square Uranus. Those are rather confusing transits. So for sure he was not thinking clearly, very delusional, kind of sacrificial behavior. Neptune is known for that, as well as being incredibly idealistic, because all of that idealism in that conjunction there really had no barrier on it and could extend out to infinity. So just really idealistic and not thinking about the consequences. And I would say a tremendous act of faith as well. And Neptune in the 10th house, where it was transiting, is willing to sacrifice themselves for society. So that was one of the influences, but more interesting ones to come. You'll see here Mercury, very close to his natal Mercury at 10 degrees of Gemini and his ascendant at 12 degrees. As well, Uranus at 11 degrees of Aries was making a sextile to his natal Mercury and ascendant at that time. So that certainly gave him the desire for independence and freedom, as well as it gave him increased intelligence, a bit of a restless mind, and a desire to make a surprising move, maybe a sudden event. Uranus is known for that. And he was also getting Pluto at 11 degrees of Capricorn, quincunxing those same 2 points, Mercury and ascendant. So that was giving him a Pluto quincunx. That's compelling him to act. Gave him a tremendous feeling of obligation to society, to do the right thing for everyone concerned, for the collective. So here we see Snowden getting caught up in a collective wave of energy and taking it rather personally, because it's right on his ascendant. And it's really all of this transpersonal energy, Pluto and Uranus coming right at him. Because what's most important of all is that at exactly the same time, or I think it was maybe May 21st, one day later, but very, very close, Uranus square Pluto. You see that? 11 degrees of Aries to 11 degrees of Capricorn. This was a major, major event. And it took place right at the same time as Edward Snowden took off for Hong Kong. Wow, that is a really big synchronicity. I mean, that one right there is worth the price of admission on this video. Just pointing that out. Because this aspect, it produces a lot of revolutionary and rebellious energy in society, in every one of us. A lot of people, including myself, were prone to compulsive, unusual, and idealistic behavior. Very revolutionary behavior. Some to the point of complete rebellion, filled with anxiety and idealistic fervor. And this is the kind of aspect that starts wars or revolutions. And many people began behaving in ways far beyond the norm, very revolutionary. So this is noteworthy because we can say that the Uranus square Pluto aspect activated the existing rebellious spirit within him, which is in this Jupiter conjunct Uranus. And everyone else at the time, he just felt it more because it was right on his Mercury and his ascendant. And he had already set himself up for this earlier in February, but was waiting for the right moment. And Uranus square Pluto lit the fuse. So this shows us once again that concurrent transits to major aspects produces actions far beyond the norm. Really got to watch out for those. They're amazing events in your life. And when you think about it, the entire world experienced the aspect Uranus square Pluto partially through the actions of Edward Snowden. He really made his mark on the world on that day. Quite amazing. Okay, so we move forward just 1 month to June the 21st, 2013, because that was the day that the U.S. Department of Justice unsealed charges against Snowden for espionage. So check out his transits on that day. You'll see Jupiter was at 29 degrees of Gemini and making a whole bunch of really great transits for this guy. Basically, we can say that Jupiter brought judicial actions. That was the one negative thing, but a whole lot of positive things as well. Because you'll notice Jupiter in the late degrees of Gemini, so basically in between the time he disclosed in May and the time that they pressed charges or unsealed charges against him, he was getting Jupiter trine Pluto, Jupiter trine Saturn, you'll see here in Libra, as well as Jupiter opposition Neptune in Sagittarius. So that's a lot of help coming in from Jupiter, as well as Jupiter conjuncting its Sun right around the time of his birthday. Enormously helpful with his legal problems, and ensured him that he could make the proper adjustments, because Jupiter trine Saturn enables you to change your structure a little bit, get a little breathing room, and enlist the aid of powerful people who have the necessary resources and so forth. Jupiter trine Pluto. Very lucky. Things go your way. And Jupiter opposition Neptune. Now that transit indicates travel across the world, over the oceans, because of that unlimited expansion. And it often manifests exactly like that, and it certainly did in his case as well. And it turned out to be really well for him because of the Jupiter conjunct Sun. And he was accepted in Russia just 2 days later. And you could say that Jupiter brought judicial actions, luck, travel, and foreigners into his life. And that whole Jupiter conjunct Sun really characterized the year he was about to have. As well as, I should say, luck with foreigners, because Jupiter gives us, luck with foreigners. So he really manifested a lot of that Jupiter energy at just the right time. You know, if he didn't have those wonderful Jupiter transits, I think it would have really, I should have also mentioned Jupiter conjunct Mars, which is very fortunate as well. So that's just a whole slew of Jupiter transits that helped him out. And once again, we could say that this concurred with another major aspect. Saturn trine Pluto was happening right around that time as well. So as he was, it happened, just 10 days earlier on June the 11th. So during that time he was running, we were getting the aspect Saturn trine Neptune. So lucky for him while he was on the run, because Saturn trine Neptune will extend compassion and sanctuary to those who truly deserve it. And that's what he found in Russia. So very interesting synchronicity to note. He has a Saturn sextile Neptune very close in his chart. 27 degrees 48 Libra, 27:49 Sagittarius. So basically exact on the day he was born. And we are going to be getting the aspect Saturn sextile Neptune on January the 31st. And that's going to be coming around, and it will affect him directly by making concurrent aspects to his chart. And that's going to be really interesting. So he seems to have taken advantage of that Saturn trine Neptune, probably more so because he's got the Saturn sextile Neptune in his natal chart. And like I said, we've got a Saturn sextile Neptune coming up. So I would say, with regards to that whole event that unfolded in the middle of 2013, we can account for his actions in a combination of things. Basically, he already wanted to be the leader of an idealistic social cause, coupled with being caught up in a collective wave that carries him to outrageous and unpredictable places. And this, no less, was followed by a series of very lucky Jupiter transits that enabled him to succeed where most human beings would have failed. And of course, you got to include his general indomitable spirit that he's got innate with his birth chart, with that Saturn conjunct Pluto, grand trine with Mars and the Sun and the midheaven. So that really enabled him to succeed as well. So long as this guy is doing the right thing for everyone concerned, he is indomitable. The transpersonal forces operating upon him at that time were just tremendous. So that pretty much covers the astrology around that big event in his life. He was under the radar for a while since then, especially a couple of years ago. We haven't heard too much about him. Saturn was opposing his ascendant, and Neptune was squaring his Mercury in ascendant. So that kind of really made him quiet for a while. But as of lately, he seems to be doing some more interviews. As a matter of fact, I'll leave some links in the description. And moving up to the present time, January 2nd, 2019. First of all, we could say in December, the Jupiter opposition Mercury, because you'll see here Jupiter's now in Sagittarius, opposing his Mercury and his ascendant. So the opposition to Mercury, he was doing a lot more interviews. And then on this day, January the 2nd, Jupiter exactly opposition ascendant, and enters his 7th house for a whole year. Well, that's pretty lucky, I would say, because really there is no better time to be involved in court proceedings than Jupiter in the 7th house. They always tend to come out better for you. Even if it's some very difficult situation, you usually come out with at least a situation that works for you. So that's very lucky for him. And I'm also thinking that this Jupiter transit could have a positive impact on getting him in the news in a positive way, especially with Mercury conjunct Neptune there happening right at the same time. His voice is going to, spread to all humanity But recall, it was Jupiter conjunct Ascendant way back in 2013. That was one of the transits that instigated his act of espionage. So he could do something else to make a big splash, as Jupiter likes to do. You know, Jupiter coming above the horizon is a big deal, and he is bound to gain more popularity around the start of the new year. Maybe he has more secret documents to release. Who knows? Maybe he didn't release them all. But I don't think this transit is going to bring more judicial actions against him, since those have already happened. Instead, it may bring some beneficial judicial actions on his behalf, maybe an appeal that he tries to make. And that's because you'll see when Jupiter reaches 14 degrees of Sagittarius on January the 13th, he's going to be getting Jupiter trine Venus. You see there at 14 degrees of Leo. Well, that's excellent. Especially for legal matters. I mean, think about it. It's Jupiter in the 7th house, ruled by Venus, trining Venus. So that really helps him. He's very lucky with regards to trying to obtain some sort of legal settlement now, if that's what he's trying to do, maybe to return to the USA. Maybe the political climate's going to be changing in January so much that that's possible. Additionally, Saturn sextile Moon on January the 19th. When Saturn reaches 13 degrees of Capricorn, it'll sextile his Moon at 13 degrees of Scorpio. Now, this is an opportunity for him to recollect himself, kind of get himself emotionally in order, deal with unresolved issues, and come to terms with the past. This transit also could have a positive impact on his legal issues, which center around the issue of privacy, which is Scorpio, as well Saturn transiting the 8th house, which is Scorpio house. So those are a couple of indicators in the middle of January that say, you know, he could have a pretty good month on the legal end of things. Let's hope for the best for him. And moving to the end of the month, on January the 31st. There we go. I had to skip ahead one more. On January the 31st, we get the aspect Saturn sextile Neptune. And as I pointed out in the Deep State War video, especially at the very end of part 2, with respect to Iraq, I pointed out not only the degrees but the minutes. 14 degrees, 55 minutes of Capricorn to Pisces. So you'll notice his Leo is at 14 degrees, 42 minutes of Leo. It's pretty close. So his Venus becomes the point of a yod, just like for Iraq with their Mercury, and for Hillary Clinton with her Pluto and her Mars, all of which are at 14 degrees of Leo. And it's important for him because he has a natal Saturn sextile Neptune. Remember that. He's got it exact as well. And now here it occurs exact on this day. So just like the Saturn trine Neptune helped him a little bit extra than it would most people, I think, so too it will be with this one. And the exact dates for the quincunx are the 24th and the 29th, so that's very close. Clearly his Venus is close enough to be caught up in this collective moment. This moment when we get more realistic about our beliefs and come to terms with the past. Maybe what he has done will help us do that in some way. Maybe we'll be seeing what role his actions played in the bigger picture, one that includes the deep state, because as of now, he just kind of exists all by himself out there as someone who divulged this very sensitive information. But maybe it somehow plays into the whole drama with the deep state. Maybe he has some sensitive information related to the deep state that he is set to release. But considering that this is a time we are able to perceive the material and non-material realms simultaneously in a balanced way, and make proper adjustments to each, our perspective for each, I should say. maybe his message regarding privacy, which is integral to the idea of personal values and ownership of your personal information. Maybe his message regarding privacy gains greater meaning to all of us by whatever event occurs around this time. And whatever that is, it's not clear. And in typical quincunx fashion, probably Snowden is swept along by forces beyond his control. That's the quality of the quincunx. But it adds all the more on intrigue, I should say, on what we can expect in January. But probably the thing that most folks want to know about him is, when is he coming home? And under what conditions? Well, certainly the present conditions, not. But transits do look good in January. And a lot of things in politics are probably going to change around then. Nonetheless, it looks more likely a little bit later in the year. I'm looking here at May 2019, and this year he gets another Uranus to Uranus transit. You'll see Uranus will be in the early degrees of Taurus, and it will trine his Jupiter, and as well trine his Uranus. Now, recall in 2004, I don't think I pointed this one out, but in my research I noted that 14 years ago, in 2004, Uranus square Uranus and Jupiter had him entering and getting discharged from the army in a short period of time, just a few months. He claimed that he broke his legs in training or something. So that Uranus to Uranus aspect had quite a impact on him. He did something rather surprising. And then in 2013, the really surprising thing happened at the Uranus trine Uranus and Jupiter, and that had him running off on an ideal to change the world. And this year, starting in May, he's going to have Uranus quincunx Uranus and Jupiter. It's going to bring some precise adjustment concerning this man's bold adventures. Maybe he comes home. Maybe some event occurs where he does come home. Hopefully it's under good circumstances. And those transits are going to continue for the rest of the year and actually into 2020. So that's probably going to be more a time when that activates his traveling. We'll see. I think in general things look pretty good for him in January, and I'm really curious to see if he has any part to play in the drama with the deep state. Well, that's all for this video. Once again, thanks for viewing. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. It really helps me to get my channel noticed. And share this video if you can. And just to let you know, I am a practicing astrologer, and if you're interested in getting a reading from me, please contact me at mobilestar7@yahoo.com or through my weblog or my website, and I'll leave links in the description. I'm doing a lot of 1-hour phone consultations for $35 and even half hours for $25, and I can work with Skype as well if you're in another country. So I've been doing a lot of those, and please contact me if you're interested in getting a reading. Well, that's all for this report. Many blessings. Have a great day, and be good to yourself.